Millionaire kicks 4-year-old daughter out, but he returns 2 days later saying, "Your entire fortune is mine now." Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The storm battered St. Augustine, Florida, with a fury that made the windows of the stately old Spanish colonial mansion of the Montgomerys rattle. Theodora Montgomery watched the rain through the bay window of the main living room, her brown eyes fixed on the drops streaking down the glass, when a flash of lightning followed by a deafening clap of thunder made her step back. It was then she saw, through the curtain of water, a small figure huddled beneath the grand oak tree in the magnolia garden. Without a second thought, Theodora grabbed an umbrella and ran outside. As she got closer, her heart clenched seeing a girl about 6 years old, soaked and shivering with cold. Her dark curls clung to a face wet with tears that mixed with the rain. "Sweetheart, what are you doing out here alone?" Theodora asked, kneeling beside the little girl. The girl looked up with almond-shaped eyes, revealing a gaze that mingled fear and hope. "I got lost," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Theodora didn't hesitate to take off her own coat and wrap it around the child, carrying her back to the mansion in her arms. Martha, the 62-year-old housekeeper who had served the family for 3 decades, was already waiting at the door with dry towels and an expression of genuine concern. "Mrs. Montgomery, what happened?" Martha asked as she helped dry the girl, who was now shivering less thanks to the warmth of the lit fireplace. "I found this little one alone in the garden, Martha. I couldn't leave her out there in this storm," Theodora replied, her eyes not leaving the child for a second. "What's your name, darling?" "Iris," the girl replied shyly, hugging the towel against her body. In the following hours, as the storm continued outside, Theodora and Martha took care of Iris. They gave her a warm bath, dry clothes they had saved from Theodora's nieces, and homemade soup that made the girl's eyes light up with satisfaction. Theodora felt her heart melt with each shy smile Iris gave. In her 48 years, she had never experienced such an instant connection with someone. The inability to have her own children had always been an open wound in her heart, but in that moment, watching Iris fall asleep on the living room sofa, something inside her transformed. However, the peace of that moment was brutally interrupted when the main doors burst open. Everaldo Montgomery, 58, stormed into the room soaked and with a stern expression on his face. "What's this story I heard in town, that my wife brought a street child into my house?" His voice thundered through the room, making Iris wake up startled. "Everaldo, please, she was alone in the rain," Theodora tried to explain, placing herself protectively in front of the girl. "I don't care. This house is not a shelter for just anyone you find on the street," he growled, approaching menacingly. Martha, who watched the scene with apprehension, intervened. "Sir, she's just a child. It's storming outside." "Silence!" Everaldo roared. "You've worked for me for 30 years, Martha, but that doesn't give you the right to question my decisions. In my own home." The gemstone magnate, known throughout the region for his wealth and difficult temper, seemed even more intimidating under the light of the lightning that continued to illuminate the room through the large windows. "Theodora, you have 1 hour to resolve this situation. When I return from my study, I don't want to see this girl here," he declared, turning to leave. It was then that Iris, summoning all her courage, got up from the sofa and said in a small but firm voice, "Please, sir, I promise not to bother you." Everaldo stopped, his back tense. For a moment, something in his posture seemed to waver, as if the girl's voice had touched some sensitive chord within him. But soon his expression hardened again. "1 hour, Theodora," he repeated before leaving a heavy silence in the room. Theodora hugged Iris, who was now crying silently, and exchanged a meaningful look with Martha. The housekeeper knew that look. It was the same one Theodora had when she made a decision she wouldn't back down from. "Martha, prepare the guest room," Theodora ordered softly. "And call Dr. Anderson. I need him to prepare some documents urgently." "But Mrs. Montgomery, the master—" "Everaldo will have to understand," Theodora interrupted, her voice firm. "I will not abandon this child." What none of them knew at that moment was that Iris's arrival at the Montgomery mansion would trigger a series of events that would forever transform the lives of everyone involved, and that the family locket, guarded with such care in Everaldo's study, held secrets much deeper than anyone could imagine. The following days at the Montgomery mansion were marked by a dense silence and palpable tension. Everaldo, displeased with Theodora's decision to keep Iris in the house, barely spoke to his wife during meals. Little Iris, sensing the heavy atmosphere, did her best to become almost invisible, tiptoeing through the mansion's corridors. Martha watched everything with keen eyes and a heavy heart. In 3 decades serving that family, the housekeeper had witnessed many storms, but something about this situation deeply disturbed her. Perhaps it was the night she found Theodora crying silently in the library, or the way Everaldo spent hours locked in his study, drinking more than usual. On a particularly tense afternoon, while Theodora was in town resolving matters with her lawyer, Iris was playing alone in the second-floor hallway. The girl had created a small imaginary world with some old dolls Martha had found in the attic. In her simple blue dress, a gift from Theodora, she looked like a little princess lost in a gloomy castle. That's when the inevitable happened. Iris, absorbed in her game, didn't realize she was too close to the antique table where the Montgomery family locket rested. A sudden movement, and the precious object tumbled down. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the mansion like an omen of disaster. "What was that?" Everaldo's voice thundered from the study. Martha, who was nearby, rushed to the hallway, only to find Iris frozen, staring at the glass shards and the old photograph that had fallen out of the broken locket. But it wasn't just the photo lying on the floor. Along with it, a yellowed and folded paper had slipped from a secret compartment in the object. Before anyone could react, Everaldo appeared in the hallway. His face, normally stern, contorted into a mask of fury upon seeing the scene. "What did you do?" he roared, advancing towards the girl. I'm sorry," Iris stammered, tears starting to roll down her face. "I didn't mean to—" "That locket," Everaldo trembled with rage, "was the only memory I had of my father. His last photo—" Martha tried to intervene. "Sir, it was an accident. She's just a child." "Silence!" Everaldo exploded, his hands shaking as he stooped to pick up the pieces. It was then that his eyes caught the yellowed paper. Something in his expression changed. It was no longer just anger, but a sudden and inexplicable fear. "Get this girl out of my sight. She's no longer welcome in this house," he ordered, his voice laced with an emotion that went beyond the initial rage. At that moment, Theodora returned to the mansion, only to find chaos had erupted. Iris ran into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "What is going on here?" Theodora demanded to know, her face pale at the state of everyone. This girl destroyed my father's locket," Everaldo accused, still holding the pieces of the object. The yellowed paper had disappeared, discreetly tucked into his jacket pocket. "It was an accident, Everaldo. For God's sake, look at her," Theodora pleaded, hugging Iris tighter. "I don't care. I want her out of here by sundown," he declared, turning to go into his study. "No," Theodora's voice was firm, surprising everyone. "She's not going anywhere." Everaldo stopped, turning slowly. "What did you say?" "You heard me." Theodora took a step forward, still protecting Iris. "While you were here, locked away with your bitterness, I was at Dr. Anderson's office. I signed temporary custody for Iris." The silence that followed was deafening. Everaldo looked as if he had been struck by lightning. You can't do that," he stammered. "I can, "And I did," Theodora replied. "As your wife, I am entitled to a portion of our assets, and now, legally, I am responsible for Iris." It was at that moment that Martha noticed something strange. While everyone was focused on the argument, the housekeeper noticed a detail on the paper that had fallen from the locket and was now slightly visible through the opening of Everaldo's pocket, a handwriting she knew very well. It was the writing of Arthur Montgomery, Everaldo's deceased father. The tension was broken by the sound of the doorbell. The next moment, James, the butler, announced, "Madam, there is an attorney at the door. She says her name is Julia Thompson and that she's here to discuss urgent matters concerning the girl, Iris." Everaldo paled even further at hearing the name, as if something in his memory had been struck. "Send her in," Theodora ordered, not taking her eyes off her husband. Julia Thompson, 41, entered the hallway with the confident posture of someone used to handling tense situations. Her dark eyes quickly assessed the scene. "Good afternoon," she greeted. "I see I've arrived at an interesting moment." "Who are you? What do you want here?" Everaldo demanded to know. An enigmatic smile appeared on Julia's lips. "Let's just say I'm very interested in Iris's well-being, and also," she paused significantly, "in certain documents that might be hidden in family lockets." Everaldo's face lost the little color it had left. How could this woman know about— Just then, a car parked in front of the mansion. From it stepped an elegant woman, approximately 37 years old, carrying travel bags. "Olivia," Everaldo murmured, recognizing his sister whom he hadn't seen in 15 years. Julia, hearing the name, turned sharply. Her eyes widened in recognition, and for a moment her professional demeanor faltered. "Liv," she whispered, using the old nickname only she knew. The air in the Montgomery mansion hallway grew even thicker. Now it wasn't just Iris's fate at stake, but long-buried secrets were beginning to surface, threatening to destroy the foundations of that family. Olivia Montgomery's unexpected return to the family mansion paralyzed everyone present. 15 years of absence hung in the air like a thick fog, but not as much as the look exchanged between her and Julia Thompson. It was as if time had frozen for the two of them, bringing back memories that should have remained buried. "So it's true," Olivia broke the silence, her controlled voice masking the inner storm. "You really became an attorney." Julia adjusted her posture, trying to maintain professionalism. "And you finally came home." The moment was interrupted by a metallic sound. Everaldo had dropped the remnants of the locket, his hands visibly trembling. All eyes turned to him, who seemed to struggle to maintain control. "This isn't the time for family reunions," he growled. But something in his voice had changed. The authoritative man now showed a subtle tremor when speaking, a weakness he tried to hide. Theodora, still holding Iris protectively, was the first to notice. "Everaldo, are you all right?" He tried to step forward, but his legs gave way. Martha, with the agility her 62 years allowed, was the first to reach him before he fell. I need to sit down," he murmured, allowing the housekeeper to support him to the nearest armchair. Olivia rushed to her brother, momentarily forgetting. "The 15 years of distance. How long has this been going on? What are you talking about?" Everaldo tried to deflect, but another involuntary tremor betrayed him. "The tremors, the weakness in your legs," Olivia insisted. "I'm not that medical student who dropped out anymore, Everaldo. I finished my neurology specialization in London." A heavy silence fell over the room. Theodora looked from her husband to her sister-in-law, beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. It was then that Iris, surprising everyone, let go of Theodora's arms and approached Everaldo. With the innocence only a child possesses, she took the trembling hand of the man who had moments before been kicking her out of the house. "My mom used to tremble like this too," she said softly. before she disappeared. The revelation hit everyone like lightning. Julia took a step forward, her eyes fixed on the girl. "Iris, do you remember your mother's name?" "Lily," the little girl replied, and Martha dropped the tray she had just brought with water for Everaldo. The sound of the tray echoed through the room, but it wasn't as loud as the housekeeper's stifled exclamation. "Lily Peterson!" Julia turned sharply to Martha. "How do you know that name?" The housekeeper paled, her eyes briefly meeting Everaldo's, before looking away. I just... "Martha," Theodora's voice was firm, "what do you know?" The housekeeper seemed to be fighting an internal battle. Her hands, marked by decades of work, squeezed her apron tightly. "Lily was the daughter of Joseph Peterson," she finally spoke. "She came to this house 6 years ago, looking for Arthur Montgomery." Everaldo tried to stand, but his legs failed him again. "Be quiet, Martha." "No, sir," the housekeeper replied, with surprising firmness. "I've carried this secret for too long. Lily came to claim what was rightfully hers, the land your father stole from the Peterson family." Olivia held onto the armchair for support. "What is she talking about, Everaldo?" It was Julia who answered, taking a yellowed envelope from her. "A briefcase. She's talking about this. A document that proves the land where the largest emerald deposits in the region were found originally belonged to the Peterson family." "How did you get that?" Everaldo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Joseph Peterson contacted my office a week ago," Julia explained. "He anonymously received a copy of Arthur Montgomery's will, where your father confesses to stealing the land." Theodora staggered, needing to lean against the wall. "The paper that fell from the locket." It was the original," Everaldo admitted, defeated. "My father hid it there before he passed away." Iris, who had remained quiet, still held Everaldo's hand. "Why are you trembling like my mom?" The girl's innocent question brought tears to Olivia's eyes. "It's a degenerative neurological disease," she explained softly. "The same one that took our father, isn't it, Everaldo?" The magnate closed his eyes, as if he could escape reality. "It started 6 months ago. The doctors say it's hereditary." "Why didn't you tell me?" Theodora asked, her voice choked. "Because he's too proud," Olivia answered for her brother. "Just like he was too proud to accept when I fell in love with a colleague from college." Julia looked away, but not before everyone noticed the blush on her face. "Destiny has a peculiar sense of humor," Martha murmured, more to herself than to the others. Just then, James hurried into the room. "Mrs. Montgomery, there's a gentleman at the door. He says his name is Joseph Peterson." Time seemed to freeze. Iris looked towards the door with wide eyes as a 72-year-old gentleman with white hair and a dignified posture entered the room. His eyes, identical to Iris's, welled up upon seeing the girl. "Grandpa," Iris whispered, letting go of Everaldo's hand. Joseph took a step forward, but stopped upon seeing Everaldo in the armchair. Something in his expression changed when he noticed the magnate's tremors. "So, the Montgomery curse has also reached you," he said, his voice heavy with ancient sorrow. "Curse?" Theodora asked. "The illness that took Arthur," Joseph explained. "The same one that affected Lily after she confronted your father, Everaldo. The same one that now—" He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of something falling upstairs in the mansion. "The study!" Everaldo tried to get up. "The letters." "What letters?" Olivia asked, but her question was answered by the sound of hurried footsteps. Descending the stairs, a figure emerged from the shadows of the hallway, holding an old box. It was Martha, and her face was bathed in tears. "It's time for the truth to come out," she declared, placing the box on the table. "All the letters that Arthur Montgomery exchanged with me for 30 years. Letters that prove that Olivia The housekeeper hesitated, looking at the young woman she had watched grow up. That proved that Olivia is my daughter. Martha's revelation resonated through the room like a shockwave. Olivia staggered, needing to lean against the nearest wall, while Julia instinctively took a step towards her, stopping halfway as she remembered she no longer had that right. "This is impossible," Everaldo whispered, his voice trembling as much as his hands. "You're lying, Martha." The housekeeper raised her chin, decades of subservience giving way to a long-suppressed dignity. "No, sir. I lied for 30 years, keeping this secret at your father's request. I won't lie anymore." With trembling hands, she opened the box of letters. The smell of old paper filled the air as she took out a specific envelope, yellowed by time. "This was the last letter your father wrote me," Martha explained, her eyes fixed on Olivia. "He wrote it the day he found out about his illness, when the first tremors began." Theodora, still holding Iris protectively, watched the scene with a mixture of horror and fascination. The little girl, meanwhile, couldn't take her eyes off her newly discovered grandfather, Joseph, who remained silent, as if he knew that moment belonged to other revelations. Martha began to read the letter, her voice choked. "My dearest Martha, when you read this letter, it's possible I no longer have control of my hands to write. The illness that took my father is beginning to consume me, and with it comes the weight of regrets. The biggest one was not having publicly acknowledged our love, and especially not having given my name to our daughter Olivia." "Stop!" Everaldo shouted, trying to get up from the armchair, but his legs failed him again. "I don't want to hear any more lies." "They are not lies, Everaldo." A new voice sounded from the living room doorway. Everyone turned to see Antoinette Montgomery, 75, the family matriarch whom no one expected to see that day. I knew too. The silence that followed was deafening. Antoinette walked slowly to the center of the room, her steps firm despite her advanced age. "Mom," Everaldo murmured, suddenly looking very small in his armchair. "Your father told me everything before he passed away," Antoinette continued, stopping beside Martha. "About the affair you had, about Olivia, about the Peterson land, about everything." Olivia, who until then had remained in shock, finally found her voice. "Why? Why keep this lie for so long?" "To protect the family," Antoinette replied, but her voice carried regret. "Or at least that's what we repeated to ourselves for all these years. In reality, it was pride, pure and simple pride." Julia stepped forward, her professional instinct momentarily overriding the emotional turmoil. "Mrs. Montgomery, did you know about the document in the locket, about the land?" Antoinette nodded slowly. "Arthur confessed everything the night he had his first severe episode. He believed the illness was divine punishment for his actions." "There's no divine punishment," Olivia interrupted, her voice carrying the weight of her medical training. "It's a genetic condition, a mutation on chromosome 9, which strangely only manifests in moments of great emotional stress," Joseph finally spoke. "As happened with my daughter Lily after she confronted Arthur about the land." Iris, who had remained quiet until then, gently let go of Theodora's arms and walked to Everaldo. Everyone watched, tense, as the girl stopped in front of the man who had tried to kick her out. "You're scared," she said simply, with the clarity only a child possesses, "just like my mum was." Everaldo looked at the girl, and for the first time since the story began, tears streamed down his face. I'm sorry," he whispered. It was at that moment that Theodora noticed something in the box of letters, a fallen envelope, different from the others, with a handwriting she recognized immediately. This is my mother's handwriting," she murmured, picking up the envelope with trembling hands. Martha paled. "Mrs. Montgomery, maybe it's better." But Theodora was already opening the envelope, her eyes scanning the lines written 2 decades ago. Her face lost color as she read. "No," she whispered. It can't be. What is it? Olivia asked, approaching her sister-in-law. My mother. Theodora choked on the words. She worked here in the mansion before I was born. She and Arthur... Theodora. Antoinette took a step forward. There's much more you need to know. Everaldo looked from his wife to his mother, a horrible understanding beginning to form on his face. No, it can't be. Your union was never blessed with children, Antoinette said softly. Now you know why. The weight of the revelation fell upon everyone like an avalanche. Theodora and Everaldo couldn't have children because they were, in fact, half-siblings. Just then, a sound of breaking glass came from upstairs, followed by James's shout, "Madam, come quickly! We found something in the master's study!" Martha was the first to react, climbing the stairs with surprising agility for her age. The others followed, leaving only Everaldo in his armchair, unable to climb, with Iris still beside him. "Don't be scared," the girl said, holding his trembling hand. "Sometimes the truth hurts, but lying hurts more." In the study, James stood, in front of an open safe, discovered behind a fallen painting. Inside it, an old folder contained documents that would forever change the destiny of everyone in that house. "These are the original land deeds," Julia announced, examining the papers. "And there's more. Receipts, transfers, proof that Arthur Montgomery not only stole the Petersons' land, but also—" She stopped, her eyes widening as she read the last document. "But also what?" Joseph asked, his voice tense. "But also knew exactly where Lily was all this time," Julia finished, her voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed Julia's revelation was broken by the sound of shuffling footsteps. Everaldo had managed to climb the stairs, leaning heavily on Iris and the banister. His face was etched with effort and a determination no one there had seen before. "I need to tell you everything," he said, his voice weak but resolute. "About Lily, about the land, about what our father really did." Theodora, still stunned by the discovery of her true relationship with Everaldo, leaned on Martha. The housekeeper, who everyone now knew was Olivia's real mother, guided everyone back to the main living room, where Everaldo could sit down. "It started 6 years ago," Everaldo began his account, his hands trembling even more. "Lily came here with proof that the land where we found the emeralds belonged to her family. She had documents, old maps, everything." "And what happened?" Joseph asked, his voice filled with ancient pain. "My father—" Everaldo swallowed hard. "He offered a deal. He said he would recognize the Peterson family's ownership of part of the land, but Lily wanted more. She wanted full justice." Olivia, who was near the window with Julia, intervened. "That's when her tremors started, wasn't it?" "Yes," Everaldo confirmed. "In the middle of a heated argument with our father, she started to tremble, exactly as is happening to me now." Antoinette approached her son, placing a hand on his shoulder. "The illness has always manifested in moments of extreme emotional stress in our family, with your grandfather, with your father, with you, and with my mom," Iris completed, her child's voice carrying a wisdom beyond her years. Julia flipped through the documents found in the safe. "According to these records, Arthur kept Lily under observation in a private clinic in Hot Springs, Arkansas." "What?" Joseph advanced, his dignity giving way to fury. "He kept her prisoner." "Not exactly," Everaldo interrupted, his voice faltering. "The clinic was for treatment of the illness. Our father, he discovered there was promising research being developed there. He kept Lily hospitalized, hoping to find a cure." "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Joseph demanded to know. "Because she didn't want you to," Martha intervened, surprising everyone. "Lily secretly contacted me 5 years ago. She didn't want her family to know about her condition, especially Iris, who was just a baby at the time." Theodora, who had remained silent, processing her own discovery about being Arthur's daughter, finally spoke. "So when I found Iris in the garden during the storm, it wasn't a coincidence," Martha completed. "Lily planned everything. She knew her days were numbered and wanted her daughter to be near the only family who could protect her and at the same time ensure that the truth about the land came to light." "But why now?" Olivia questioned. "Why are all these revelations coming out just when Everaldo started showing symptoms?" It was James who answered, entering the room with an envelope that had just been delivered. "Because Dr. Regina Carter from the Hot Springs Clinic finally succeeded." "Succeeded at what?" several asked at once. "The cure," James replied, handing the envelope to Olivia. "The research was completed 3 months ago. They managed to develop a treatment that reverses the neurological degeneration." Olivia opened the envelope with trembling hands, her medical eyes scanning the scientific reports. This is revolutionary," she murmured. "The treatment uses stem cells combined with a specific gene therapy for the chromosome 9 mutation." "And Lily?" Joseph asked, his voice barely containing hope. "She was the first to receive the experimental treatment," Julia replied, reading another document from the safe. "And according to these reports, she—" The sound of footsteps in the entrance hall interrupted Julia. Everyone turned to see a woman about 45 years old, with the same almond-shaped eyes as Iris, standing at the living room door. "Mommy!" Iris shouted, running towards the familiar figure. Lily Peterson, now fully recovered from the tremors that had afflicted her, hugged her daughter with tears in her eyes. "Forgive me, my love. Mommy needed to get well first." The emotional reunion was watched by everyone with tears in their eyes. Everaldo, still in his armchair, trembled more intensely. "Please," he whispered, "forgive me." Lily looked at the man who was now facing the same illness that had almost destroyed her. Her face, once marked by resentment, now showed only understanding. "The cure isn't just for the body," she said softly. "It's for the soul, too." At that moment, Theodora found something among the documents that made her heart stop. An old photo of her mother with Arthur Montgomery. And on the back of the photograph, a note that would change everything once again. "No," she whispered, "this isn't possible." The photo fell from her trembling hands, revealing to everyone the note that would trigger the biggest revelation of all. The photograph on the floor revealed much more than a simple image of the past. On the back, Arthur Montgomery's shaky handwriting confessed his last and deepest secret. "Forgive me, my daughter Theodora, for never telling you the truth. You and your mother were the true heirs to the Peterson land. The document I signed, stealing the land from Joseph, was to hide that you, my illegitimate daughter, were actually Joseph's granddaughter on your mother's side." The impact of the revelation hit everyone like a wave. Theodora staggered, supported by Martha, while Joseph approached with hesitant steps, his eyes fixed on the woman he had just discovered was his granddaughter. "Mary Ann," he whispered the name of the daughter he had lost decades ago. "Your mother, my youngest daughter." "What does this mean?" Theodora asked, her voice choked. It was Lily who answered, still hugging Iris. "It means we're cousins, Theodora. Your mother, Mary Ann, was my father's sister." The Montgomery Mansion living room, which had already witnessed so many revelations that day, seemed too small to contain the weight of that truth. Everaldo, in his armchair, watched the scene with an expression of deep understanding. "That's why Dad tried so hard to get us married," he said to Theodora, his voice weak. "It wasn't just to keep the land in the Montgomery family. It was to try and correct the mistake he had made, uniting the two families." "But he only managed to cause more pain," Olivia commented, unconsciously moving closer to Julia. "As he did with me and Martha, as he did with all of us." Antoinette Montgomery approached the center of the room, her proud posture contrasting with the humility in her voice. It's time to correct all the mistakes, not just Arthur's, but ours too. The ones we made out of pride, out of fear, out of shame. And that's why I'm here, Lily announced, gently releasing Iris. She walked to Everaldo, taking a vial. With a clear liquid from her purse. The cure doesn't just work on the body, it gives us a second chance to do what's right. Everaldo looked at the vial with teary eyes. Why would you do this for me? After everything my family did? Because Iris taught me that forgiveness is stronger than resentment, Lily replied, a soft smile on her lips. And because your illness is the same one that almost took my daughter from me, no one deserves to go through that. Theodora, still processing her own discovery, watched as Olivia, with her medical expertise, prepared the first dose of the treatment for Everaldo. The scene seemed unreal. Arthur's illegitimate daughter saving his legitimate son, while all the secrets buried for decades finally came to light. The treatment is a process, Olivia explained, carefully administering the first dose, just as our emotional healing will be too. Julia approached Olivia, lightly touching her arm. This time, you won't go through this alone. The gesture did not go unnoticed by Everaldo, who watched his sister with new eyes. Forgive me, Olivia, he whispered, for trying to control your life, for driving you and Julia apart. The important thing is that now we can start over, Olivia replied, silent tears streaming down her face. Martha, watching the scene beside, Antoinette finally allowed herself to smile. 30 years keeping secrets, and now finally we can breathe. It was then that Iris, with the unique wisdom of children, took Theodora's hand and led her to Joseph. Now you have a grandpa too, she said simply. The embrace that followed between Theodora and Joseph melted the last barriers of pride and resentment that still lingered in that room. Lily joined them, forming a circle that represented the union of the Peterson and Montgomery families, no longer by lies, but by the truth. The land will go back to the Peterson family, Everaldo announced, his voice already a little stronger after the first dose of treatment. But this time, we'll do things differently. We'll work together as one family. And the mansion? James asked, having observed the entire scene in silence. It was Theodora who answered, a new spark in her eyes. It will be a home for children who, like Iris, need a family, a place where there will be no more secrets or closed doors. 3 months later, the Montgomery mansion was unrecognizable. The previously gloomy corridors now echoed with children's laughter. The study where so many secrets had been kept had been transformed into a community library. Everaldo, responding well to the treatment, dedicated his mornings to reading stories to the children, discovering in the simplicity of these moments a happiness all his money had never bought. Olivia and Julia had rekindled their relationship and together coordinated a project providing legal and medical assistance to underprivileged families in the region. Martha, finally recognized as Olivia's mother, now managed the mansion not as a housekeeper, but as a matriarch alongside Antoinette. Theodora and Lily developed a deep friendship, united not only by the Peterson blood, but by the shared experience of having their lives transformed by Iris's arrival. Together, they coordinated the social projects that now occupied the mansion. On a special afternoon, during Iris's 7th birthday celebration, Everaldo asked to speak, leaning on his cane, no longer because of the illness, which was responding well to treatment, but as a humble reminder of his journey. He looked at each face present. "A year ago I was a man consumed by pride and fear," he began, his voice firm. "It took a 6-year-old child to teach me that true wealth isn't in safes or emeralds, but in the bonds we build, the courage to forgive, and the strength to start over." Iris, sitting between Theodora and Lily, smiled. Her innocent smile still had the power to light up the entire room. But now there were no more shadows to disperse. The Montgomery mansion, once a monument to power and secrets, had been transformed into a true home, where the Montgomery and Peterson families finally found the peace that money could never buy. And on the walls of the main living room, where before there were only austere portraits of the Montgomerys, there was now a new photograph. Iris, surrounded by her extended family, no longer divided by secrets and grudges, but united by the love and truth that only a child could have brought to light.